I guess we are ready to get started. Welcome to our panel session this morning. No, it may be the last panel session you do this whole trip, right? So we're happy that you're here. I'm just going to introduce the panelists, and then we're going to get right into questions, and then we'll ask questions, and then at the end of that, we'll open it up to hear what you guys want to talk about. This is a really expert group, so you're going to want to pick their brains if you can. I'm not including myself in there. It's just them. So, all right. So, to my immediate left, we have Randy Roberts, who is Vice President of Residential Business Development for U.S. Air Conditioning at Rheem Manufacturing. For over a quarter of a century, Randy has played an active and integral role growing and positioning Rheem's U.S. air conditioning division for long-term success. Since 1997, Randy has worked closely with Rheem contractors and distribution partners, helping them succeed and grow their business while also strengthening Rheem's culture, strategy, and customer and consumer partner engagement. Randy currently oversees Rheem's residential sales, marketing, customer service, and product development efforts. So welcome, Randy.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Nick Conklin, who is Director of Solution Planning and Strategy at LG Air Conditioning Technologies USA. I should just say that these are all our member companies too, by the way. I'm with AHRI. I didn't even introduce myself. I'll do that. I'll do that in a minute. I threw in my name badge. I don't even know who I am. Nick Conklin, who is Director, I told you who he was. He is focused on working cross-functionally to develop and execute LG's long-term strategy to drive sales growth nationally. Nick has over 15 years of experience in both domestic and global product channel, strategic planning, and sales leadership. And finally, last but certainly not least, Vikas Anand is Vice President of Sales for Danfoss Climate Solutions North America. With over 25 years of experience in international sales, marketing, and business development across diverse industries, Vikas has consistently delivered strong results in mature and emerging markets. He's successfully led teams across India, Southeast Asia, North Asia, and the Pacific region, building high-performing teams focused on strategic planning, channel management, customer engagement, and portfolio management. And now I will tell you, I am Francis Dietz, Vice President of Public Affairs for the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute. If you're not familiar with us, just look on your equipment. There's that little sticker. That's us. So we are going to get started right away. I just want to start off talking about heat pump technologies. In my role, I deal with the media a lot, and the media loves to talk about heat pumps. Most of the time, they don't even know if they have a heat pump in their own house. I will say, like, do you have a heat pump? And they'll be like, yeah, I'm not sure. Where do you live? Florida. You have a heat pump. So I want to talk about, like, are you seeing an increase in consumer preference for these technologies? Not only because of tax credits and other incentives that are available through the Inflation Reduction Act, but also just because they're sort of the hot topic of the day. You can go. Anybody can go.
Sure. So, I mean, I'll start off on LG side. We really focus on heat pumps. All we really make are heat pumps in our product line. We don't even offer cooling-only products. So certainly on our side, we've seen a lot of interest in it, more regionally focused and in the Northeast and West Coast to start out. But it's been a constant point of discussion with our pro dealer base, and they're starting to see increased sales, and we're starting to see getting away from what would be our core, which was just the wall mount style heat pump products, and now mixing more into ducted and whole home solutions. So it is definitely a direction we've seen, and we get a lot more requests from it, not just on the homeowner side, but on the contractor side.
And is that true, Nick, in all areas of the country, or is it still mostly in the Northeast?
It is all areas, but we're seeing, I'd say, more interest where it's better incentivized.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so Danfoss is a component manufacturer, so we work with, I would say, OEMs like, I would say, Rheem, and I would say LG, and I would say bring our innovation and engineering and solutions for heat pumps. So we have, over the last, you can say, many years, have started to see already a upward trend on the, I would say, the heat pump solutions. We are a global company. It all started, I would say, with Europe because of the regulatory need and also the need to, I would say, decarbonize because of the natural gas bans. So we have already started to see a lot of, I would say, demand in the companies developing solutions for heat pumps, and now I would say also with cold climate heat pumps, that's also a major thrust with many of the companies, with the federal government supporting that initiative, especially for the, I would say, the northeast area where the temperatures can go down to, I would say, freezing temperatures, and the need for, I would say, cold climate heat pumps. So we have a plethora of, I would say, solutions that we work with, and we have already started to see a positive trend on that.
Yeah. You think you're going to see more demand for cold climate heat pumps in Florida, given the weather that they have?
There's still a lot of straight cool in Florida, by the way, when you go south of Orlando. Yeah, I'll jump in too. So I was looking at it this morning before I walked in just to make sure. I think last year's numbers, I know they were roughly 40% of the market was heat pumps. And if you look at it, you know, that has grown every year and outpaced air conditioning for at least probably the last 10 years. Probably the biggest thing that we're seeing is a ducted and ductless manufacturer that we see is just the blending of the whole ducted and ductless play. Products that we've launched and others have launched are more universal heat pumps, trying to give more options to contractors to be able to put them back into place. Those type things are really trying to help, because the problem you find in a lot of markets that have heavily been gas is the panels can't handle the electrical load for a heat pump, especially if it has resistance heat. So then you get into, hey, let's look at a 115 air handler that goes on that product, or really look at dual fuel. And I would tell you that's one of the surprising things from a manufacturer standpoint, especially when I look at a lot of markets that have been primarily gas markets by a significant amount, is just those markets to me are just perfect candidates for dual fuel applications. Putting that heat pump, putting that coil on a gas furnace in a fantastic way. And our analogy always with the contractor and distributors is it's just like the hybrid automobiles. The full electric may not be the right option for you, but that is the best of both worlds, where you can play in either equation. And hopefully we'll see more of our industry going and really pushing those kind of interim step solutions. To me, it's the way that markets that have been gas markets can help get to heat pumps in a lot faster way.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Randy. I mean, when I replaced my system in Virginia, I wasn't thinking about dual fuel, but my contractor convinced me to do that. I put in a 5-stage unit, and it's paired with just an 80% gas furnace, because we don't have that. We don't have the need for anything higher than that in terms of efficiency. But both of my bills went down, and it's a very comfortable system. But do you guys see an increase in, say, mini splits for supplemental, like when people put additions on their house or things like that?
We've seen a trend towards people using that for supplemental, especially where you go into homes where they are mainly baseboard homes, whether it be baseboard radiant or baseboard electric, where they want to offset that electric cost from the baseboard. That is certainly something where we see they'll put a mini split or duct-free split system in the largest room of the house, and then really try to let that carry the home. And oftentimes we're seeing people use circulator fans inside rooms to help move air throughout the house, to help get that circulation, to help improve the usage of the mini split inside the home. So there is a lot of that strategy that goes on, especially in homes that weren't designed for traditional ducted systems.
Mm-hmm. Just really quickly though, Randy, you talked about sometimes the electrical is not what's needed if they're putting in a certain type of a heat pump. Does that make it a cost factor? Like, does that discourage people from putting those in because of the higher upfront cost? Do you see that?
I think if you're, reality and curious, the contractors in the room would hopefully nod in agreement. When all of a sudden you start talking about, hey, we need to upgrade your entire electrical panel and your service coming into the house, and the homeowners are instantly seeing dollar signs, right? What does that mean for me? Oh, is there a better option that does not? And candidly, we all know the challenge that our industry has faced, and every industry, with inflation and changes and efficiencies and those things, is really that cost to the consumer is so significant now for changing out a system, no matter if it's a ducted or a ductless or whatever it is. So when you start talking to a consumer and then you go, well, we can do this, but it means we got to change your whole panel out, our training and what we try to do and what we're trying to show customers is, hey, here's some better options, right? If you want to get the incentive and take, and in a lot of cases now, we're also seeing the local utility incentives trying to drive the behavior as well as the programs that are out there. Hey, here's interim steps you can take that really are lower cost to the consumer that really can provide a comfortable home. And that's really the key, is use the right technology in the application to get comfort to the consumer. And then if we do that, we'll have great reviews from consumers.
To add on just a little bit, Randy, to your electrical discussion, I think one of the big challenges we face, especially in the cold climate heat pump segment, is really educating people on the performance capabilities of these heat pumps. So often I see electric going back in to heat pump systems that really don't need it, and where they could potentially leverage their existing panel. It's really taking an effort to teach people that these systems perform not in the way you think heat pumps used to perform, but they'll get 100% out down to 5 degrees, operate at minus 13 or below. So we're really changing the way that heat pumps work inside these spaces.
So are you going to go to like an ad campaign like "Not Your Father's Heat Pump"?
Exactly.
Yeah, and we do this a lot in our training classes as well. We really try to promote that.
Yeah, it is amazing how far with technology and Danfoss and other compressor companies as well, with vapor injection and things we can do in the system to really get that performance and that capacity at those super low temperatures is really, it's neat technology. It's come a long way in the last 5 years.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good because so one thing is the technology and the innovation that is happening on the cold climate heat pumps, whether this is vapor injection, whether this is compression technology, whether this is defrost cycles, because that's all driving making the system more energy efficient. On the other side, as we go more and more heat pumps and electrification, the demand on the electrical grid is going to skyrocket. And I think in many areas, our electrical grids are not resilient enough and not, I would say, set up to take on such a high demand that is coming because of the electrification. At the same time, we see there's a huge demand coming from the data centers. I would say the data centers are, I would say, drawing a lot of power from these electrical grids. So I think at the same time as the electrification, the decarbonization happens, the pressure on the electrical grids to make their grids more modern, I would say, with demand response programs and I would say power lead generation. So there's going to be a whole lot of, I would say, work that needs to be done on the electrical grid to really, really support the massive acceleration that is coming here on the heat pumps.
Well, I'll share this story. I live in Birmingham, so part of Southern Company as far as utility go, and I was at dinner with one of their executives, and and I knew this, but it's unbelievable to me that their peak load is now winter, and this is Alabama, Georgia, the Panhandle, all the way through. It just shows how many heat pumps are in the market. That a 98-degree day in July or August is not when they're seeing peak load. It's when it's 10 degrees outside, and and his comment was they are now very nervous on very, very cold days that. Can they handle the load? And I think that's going to be the big challenge for all of us in all these markets, is how do they get more capacity in electricity output today. And there's definitely things on the horizon for them, just like our industry, when it comes to when a lot of their plants have to come offline. And I think their fear is they don't have the technology to build that base load.
So is this something that you all talk to regulators about? Will you talk to legislators about? Talk to utility groups and that sort of thing? Are these things that you bring up with them?
Yes, I think we do. I think that obviously, we all know. I think there'll be some change in some of the mindset of some of the regulations. We're already seeing that right now in 3 weeks' time. So I think there could be a little change in some of the dynamics of what happens in some of these. We're already seeing. I know, we're already seeing some things being rolled back or threatened to be rolled back. So we'll see how it all plays. But I think that I would answer it in just to say I think it'll be fun to see what some of these changes that we've been managing to, how they could change. And I will tell you from a manufacturer standpoint, that's where preemption and things like that come into play, that we really would like certainty. And we would like certainty because we're investing, hundreds of millions of dollars to build products to meet regulations and requirements. And the worst thing in the world is to do all the capital investment, build that product, and then have a curveball thrown at you at the last minute and go, oops, sorry, it's going in this direction, not this direction. So anyway.
But I would also add, I would
Mind.
say, Francis, that I think as individual companies, we have a responsibility to keep educating, I would say, with the senators or Congress, I would say, with what's happening in the industry. But as an association, we know that AHRI is also doing a lot of work to, I would say, promote that efforts.
Right.
And I think our voice together is much more powerful than, as
true.
would say, individual companies and individual suppliers, because I think we can all come together and keep educating the industry, because this is pretty transformative for our communities and our industries. And I think we can all do, I would say, much more here to, I would say, keep moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would jump in on the comment on that is if you're not involved with AHRI or PHCC, or if you're a distributor in the room and you're not active within AHRI, get involved, because that group is really working with AHRI and everyone else is where we have to be one voice to Washington around what's good for the consumer and good for the industry.
Yeah, we actually have a joint meeting with AHRI in May in Washington. We always have our policy symposium in Washington, and we're now doing it jointly with AHRI, because, and that's what we say, one strong industry voice. And we want to go up there and make sure they understand all the aspects of this. And we had talked, and I won't get too far off on a tangent, but when you have increases in efficiency levels, sometimes the equipment is bigger, and then suddenly you can't fit as much equipment on your truck as you used to be able to. And those are very practical effects of regulation that most people don't think about. Policymakers don't think about it. They've never driven an equipment truck, I can assure you. I've never driven an equipment truck, but at least I see them. So, so those are things that it's important for you all to get involved, because you can tell that story. And even your state legislators, they buy your equipment. So you're installing things in their house. So it gives you a perfect opportunity to educate them as you're doing your work and as you're interacting with them. Just those things to think about. I don't think we've seen any executive orders on banning heat pumps yet, right?
Not yet.
All right, so let's hope it stays that way. So talking about the regulatory environment, which we sort of touched on already, obviously it's probably going to be a little calmer at the federal level for the next 4 years, maybe. I mean, there's still regulations that come down the pike, and they still need to be dealt with. But I think it's not going to be a situation where you're going to have, big changes in standards. If you have changes, they probably would be somewhat minimal. But the situation, though, at the state level is going to be that they are going to feel they need to fill the void, right? So California is going to be even more active, maybe Washington State, Oregon, New York. We're just in the middle. Well, we haven't even finished the current refrigerant transition, and New York is already talking about the next one. So are these things that you all, pay attention? I mean, does it sort of keep you up at night, if you will?
I mean, we're heavily involved at the state level, especially on the LG side, because we have been focused more on the higher efficiency heat pump technologies, cold climate heat pump technologies, which tends to drive us more towards states that have driven those, such as California and New York. So I don't know that it keeps us up at night. Certainly it's harder to deal with 50 different legislating bodies sometimes than one, but we're prepared for any of it, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the regulatory environment today is much more complex than we have ever seen in industry. And I think as an industry, as manufacturers, to keep pace with everything and keep, I would say, keep bringing our product roadmap and innovation in line with the regulatory, I think it has never been so complex and also challenging as an industry, as a manufacturer. So it's not only with the federal, I would say, level, but also with the state levels, with the building codes, what's happening on the refrigerant change. If you put together all this is a massive, I would say, challenge for the industry. Yeah. But I believe as an industry, we are doing pretty well to manage and navigate through all these, I would say, barriers and challenges and changes that is coming on a short notice. But it's also about educating the contractors, the distributors, because as large companies, as global companies, we have the resources to keep, I would say, pace with many of things. But if you go to, I would say, the tier 2 and tier 3 and distributors and contractors, as we work with them, we realize that many of them are not have the, I would say, the ability to keep pace with them. So as an industry, we also have the responsibility to educate the, I would say, the next tier, I would say, people in the industry.
And all these changes certainly present challenges to distribution, which has to stock all of this product. And so you're talking about stocking and changeover, and how do you manage old inventory and new inventory. And I think we were looking forward to probably a little bit of a breath from all the changes we've had between efficiency changes and refrigerant changes. So hopefully it does stay a little bit calmer, not just for the manufacturing side, but for our customers as well.
But you don't want it to be too calm. Like last time, in the last Trump administration, they thought they were doing industry a favor by delaying rulemakings. But the problem is, the conveyor belt just backed up, and then when the dam broke, they all came flooding down. And the new administration thought that, Max Tech was just wonderful. So let's just make it as efficient as it can be.
Wave the magic wand and it will happen. Yes.
So that's something we have to guard against, and something we're going to be working with the DOE folks on. And I know you guys are going to be helping us on that.
I will say it from our standpoint. I think it's amazing when I look back and go that we have 6 full-time employees that are doing nothing but regulation work. And then now we're also going to states and hiring advocates and hiring consultants in almost all of the states that we're seeing leading the pack, I would say, with some of the regulations they're writing. And, you mentioned it, New York is a great example. We've got a new refrigerant requirement in 2030 and heat pump water heaters in 2027 that no one has technology to even meet the requirement in the U.S. today. So, those are the kind of things that you all look and go, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And what does this mean? But I will say it is exciting from a manufacturer standpoint, because if you look over the last 10 years, we've had multiple efficiency changes, new refrigerant changes, which for a manufacturer of equipment, it means a total product redesign, 4,000 plus SKUs launching and all of those type activities. What that means for all of us, at least I'll speak on our behalf, is you're not able to do some of the cool projects and innovation stuff you want to do because you're focused on meeting a regulation. The good news is we think roughly about 2032 before we have another full efficiency change, at least for the industry. It's going to allow the industry, one, to not have to worry about inventory being stranded in the marketplace at the end of a year, which we're all facing this year. Yeah. And the other great thing is it will allow us to do some really cool, innovative technology that's going to help our contractors and help the consumer with their product. So we're excited that, we've got the list of projects. I'm not going to read those off to you today for our competition to hear, but we've got the list of projects that we're working on and investing and, getting tooled up to be able to do some neat stuff. So it's exciting not to have to focus solely on a regulation requirement.
No, it's a good point you bring up. I mean, at AHRI, we used to have one regulatory person, literally one. And now I think we probably have 8. And we also have a full complement of folks who do state government relations, and we have consultants in all the major, I would call them the problem states. But, we just finished
the opportunity states.
We just finished, getting all the states to change their building codes, update their building codes to allow A2Ls. And that was a huge, huge undertaking. We spent literally millions of dollars on that. But it's so necessary. But it gives you an idea of how difficult these things are. I mean, the fact that you couldn't use A2Ls anywhere in the U.S. just, 4 or 5 years ago and to have them all allow it now is really incredible. But it takes an incredible amount of work and a lot of money. There's a lot that goes into it. So I don't know if y'all have heard this, but the Trump administration seems to have quite a fondness for tariffs. Can you talk a little bit about how that impacts your near-term planning? And I recognize that it doesn't really impact you because we don't ever know what is really going to happen from day to day. But let's talk tariffs.
I can hit that one. It was it the weekend before last, I believe it was, when the announcement came out on the tariff, and it was amazing. I looked at my phone once that hit. Emails started flying in. What does this mean? What is this going to happen? Monday the phone was ringing off the hook. What are you going to do? What's the answer? And then they were delayed. So we'll see what happens with that. But obviously that would be a significant hit to the U.S. market. I looked at it, just doing the Google search just to see. I think just quick stats, which is crazy. I think at least 25% of the automobiles, 60% of the televisions, half of the fruits and vegetables, everything is coming across the border from Mexico. So if you look at what the impact would be, and I would tell you in our industry, every manufacturer has operations in Mexico. Probably 70 to 80% of the components coming into the U.S. that are even for equipment assembled in the U.S. are coming from plants across the border. So when you look at it, it would have a very significant increase for our entire industry if that were to happen. I think the goal of moving jobs is exciting, but obviously it takes 18 to 24 months for a major manufacturer to move equipment, and that's a minimum. That's if you look at tooling lead times and those kind of things, you can't shut down your production. You got to buy new tooling and basically get a new plant set up and new facilities. So that takes a lot of time. But obviously the consumer would bear the brunt of that impact, and we would see price increases in our industry pretty significantly. I think all of our hope is that it's a negotiation tool that drives behavior and drives things, which it already is, but we'll see. But obviously, those of you that are watching the news saw there were tariffs that were just announced on steel and aluminum. Mm-hmm. Those will absolutely impact our industry. And, no matter how you look at it, there's a whole lot of steel and a whole lot of aluminum that goes into building an air conditioning unit. So we'll see. It's a dynamic environment. So put your seatbelt on and buckle up, because we'll all manage through it. But I'll say this. And I've got someone in the back of the room that we do a lot of business with, and that's in Synchrony and consumer financing and programs that we do. You've got to give those homeowners pathways to be able to afford the equipment they're buying. Inflation's been significant on equipment and installation costs and everything. That's the only thing that from a manufacturer sitting here is, how do we make sure our products are still affordable to where consumers are not going back to technology that we all saw in our grandparents' homes, like attic fans and things like that really don't provide a lot of comfort, but are a whole lot lower cost solution. That's my fear and challenge, I think, for our industry is helping those consumers be able to afford the products they need to keep their homes comfortable.
I mean, we remember, we had this situation. I remember when we went from 10 SEER to 13 SEER, and that was like a huge deal, and it was a huge cost jump. And we saw, it set back efficiency for a long time because people just repaired the older, less efficient unit that they had, or they went down to Home Depot and bought a couple of window units to tide them over. So there's sort of the law of unintended consequences at work here. And so let me just ask you though, we had a meeting here yesterday, and one of the manufacturers suggested that we not oppose these things because we could end up on a disfavored list or something like that. And I'm not asking you on the record, it's not your company's position or whatever, but what do you think about that? Would you not oppose something just because you were concerned about, the politics of it, or would you, defend your company and your customers? Look at them all look at blankly. Shit, what am I going to say about that?
But I think it's fair to say, I would say, Francis, that we are living in a globalized world. And I think as an industry, as manufacturers, we have set our, I would say, supply chains on a global basis. So more or less everybody has manufacturing in China and Mexico and in Europe and US. So I think we have,
South Korea,
and to unwind that, I would say on a short notice, I think it's extremely complex for every manufacturer. As an industry, of course, we need to, I would say, bring the voice, I would say, out there, challenge some of the thought process. But there are bigger industries than us that are impacted as significant as this. So how much influence we have as an industry, how much voice we have together as an association, as a manufacturers. I think everybody may have a different view on that. But I completely, I would say, I understand, I would say, the feedback from that manufacturer. I would say they said, okay, we should not challenge. But what I will also say, I think it's going to be, as already said, it's going to be challenging to navigate how things evolve and develop. The amount of discussion that we had over the last couple of days during the show around tariff, I think is amazing. Everybody is concerned about it, the amount of, I would say, impact it has on the inflation, on pricing, and not only for as a manufacturer, we're living in such complex supply chain, products coming from one country to another country, going back to a third country to be sub-assembled to move to the fourth country. So to navigate how much impact does it has on your component, on sub-assembly and finished product and equipment, it's so complex. And I think, so this is the world that we're living in, and I believe we'll continue to live in this world for the next, I would say, a few years. And to put up a new manufacturing just based on a short-term policy.
Yeah, to me, it's not about opposition, it's about education, right? So it's saying, here is the impact that the industry is going to face based on this decision, and making sure that that is fully evaluated, rather than saying, no, I just am stringently opposed to putting on a tariff on something.
Right. No, that's good. It's a good point. All right, so let's go to other issues you might want to discuss that we have not touched on yet. And then we'll open it up to you guys. Anything we haven't
Well, I think one of the
about?
things I think we a little bit touched upon this is about education and training, because I think it's been
I was supposed to bring that up.
it's a I think the era that we're living right now as an industry, I think we have the amount of change that we are seeing at different levels, from a regulation perspective, from energy efficiency, from innovation, from the artificial intelligence, decarbonization. So there's a lot that is happening, and as an industry, I would say, a responsibility towards educating, I would say, distributors, the contractors, the installers. As one of you was saying, I would say, when people come and you got influenced by contractors, I would say, giving you a proposal to use a dual fuel heat pumps rather than, I would say, a completely electric heat pump. So I think that comes only with the education, and we as manufacturers and industry can, I think, do a lot more. I would say giving opportunities, I would say, to train people on the technology, on the equipment, on energy efficiency, and I think we are not doing enough.
Yeah. I mean, we do everything we can to make sure that we offer as many education classes and seminars at our training centers nationally, to make sure that we are educating installers on the proper installation methods for our products, and then also what the benefits are of those products and how they can leverage those, and not just to stay in the mindsets of what they knew before walking into those classes. Not to say, all right, this is how your grandmother's heat pump worked, or whatever it may be. This is now, a new era, and also, the labor force that we're seeing is still, it's an aged labor force on the installer side. We went a long time without driving people into technical schools, and you're starting to see that change again, it's a positive trend, but there's a lot that's out there that guys, that this is the way I've always done it, so this is the way I'm going to do it, and we need to think more flexibly about how we install HVAC systems moving forward.
Yeah, I used to have a boss who told me, do it however you want. You're going to do it anyway.
Well.
But no, the technician training is particularly important right now. I mean, we just started in earnest the refrigerant transition just, beginning January 1. And, so far it seems to be going fine, but I mean, it's only February 12th. So
we'll do, and I'll jump in.
Yeah.
We do a lot of, we do a ton of training, and we track it. We actually, have part of our sales team incentivized on how much training and how many people they touch every year, which has been awesome for us. It's gotten us well over 100 and something thousand every year that we touch, as far as what we call industry professionals, which would be contractors and distributors. And when you do that, I think it's great. It helps, but you're still not getting the message, because, for me, it was always interesting when you go to a large contractor meeting, even 6 months ago, and you would ask about the A2L transition, and you would get some blank looks, and, well, what do you mean I can't buy 410A after this date, and it's amazing how our industry still struggles with getting that. But one of the things I'll say back to the install, I think as manufacturers, we got to keep bringing technology that brings value to you. A good example for us recently was, we changed a lot of our indoor to where they went away from the old dip switches to Bluetooth through the app. And literally it's like the iPhone, to where it's simple. And we actually now have airflow settings we feel like getting set correctly more times than not, because someone's not in a crawl space or an attic trying to look through a light to see if the dip switches are set correctly on that furnace or that air handler. And they're doing it with that technology and really answering questions, very simple questions, in that setup process to really simplify the install, so you get the consumer a better, higher quality install. Those are things we have to do as manufacturers to really make our products easy, and I think that's critical.
No, it's a good point you bring up, because just a couple weeks ago, I was out to dinner and I started like getting these messages one after another on my phone from my heat pump
Telling you it's not
saying
right.
that there was a fault, urgent message, fault.
Yeah.
And we get home and it seemed fine. But then Monday morning I got a call from my contractor. And they said, yeah, you got a fault, and if your system's working fine now, it's not going to be. So we're going to come out and fix it, which they did. And right after they said they were sending somebody out, no heat. So, but that's so helpful. I mean, not just having like a service agreement, obviously, but to have your contractor call you and tell you something you didn't really know yourself, and you didn't realize that your system was about to conk out on you is really cool.
One other thing I would bring up, and is that I think is important. Obviously, we all know that the last day that we could build a 410 system was at the end of last year, 12/31. So there's a decent amount of 410A product that will probably be in the channel through Q1, probably some into Q2, depending on the distributor and how much they brought in. But one of the things that I think our industry has got to advocate and get cleaned up is install date standards. That's something that I think needs to stop, because what install date standards do for all of us in this room is put at risk a significant amount of capital for every contractor and distributor, to where you cannot legally install a product that was legally manufactured but has a window where it can't be installed. I think one of the things I would say is we always used to do manufacturer date, right? When it's built, then it can allow it to move through the channel. I think as an industry, I know AHRI is a big advocate of this. All of us as manufacturers are, which is we should be doing manufacturer date standards. The industry can build the product, you sell it through the channel as a contractor, and it moves forward. But when you put a date, some random date out there, and now we have one, which is 12/31 of 2025, is the last day you can legally install a 410A system. Our industry doesn't move that fast, and our industry will have inventory that is going to be stuck or becomes literally worth nothing, and then you end up having to liquidate it, and who knows where that goes at that point, or it leads to folks installing things they shouldn't be installing, which is a problem for our industry. It's not right, but this is the kind of stuff I'm getting on my soapbox that I think all of us as an industry need to say, you know what, we will follow guidelines, but you have to do it based on manufacturer date, not a random install date.
So you're saying there's going to be a clearance sale next December?
Yeah, no matter how good we are, at least maybe Rheem is the outlier, but no matter how good we are, there's always product that's left in the barn, mismatched air handlers, mismatched furnaces, mismatched outdoor units, and I think every contractor and distributor in the room would agree that they have the same problem.
And the thing is, this is relatively new from my experience. I mean, it used to be that the date of manufacture was the norm. So we really do need to get back to that. And I think I don't really understand why it's so hard for people to understand how important that is, but I'm guessing it's just because, regulators don't have a manufacturing background, clearly, and maybe not even a business background. I don't know. But it's definitely on a radar. I mean, we had a panel session here, right in this very room, yesterday, where the industry panel, and Talbot and Steve talked about that. So it's something that we definitely push a lot. Anything else, guys? Okay. How about you?
I got a quick question.
Yes, sir.
I remember when the first transition of the R12, remember those days? It seemed to go real smooth. I was in the trade, and it wasn't so complicated. Are we fragmented in our trade, or where we're all doing something different? We got all kind of different, because I know there's a lot more than, like when they went to 134A on the automotive, it was quick. It was quick, and now it seems like we're fragmented at the core of the whole industry, or everybody's doing their own thing, or?
I don't see the fragmentation. I mean, I think that the industry has been very united on this transition. I mean, we started it way back in like 2011 we started doing the research for the new refrigerants and, working through NIST and then through the fire service and all of that and doing all the research. And I mean, our companies, I think, spent something like $5 billion on all of that. So I don't see any fragmentation.
Yeah, so far, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
So far, it's gone well. I mean, we're I know these guys are as well, whether it's 32 or 454. We're all building product right now with the new A2L refrigerants. We're shipping it, in bulk. That's the only thing and we're running our plants at full steam building that, because what we're doing right now is stocking all of our wholesalers with that product. And candidly, they're selling through 410 at a very fast pace. So they're starting to basically, that transition is happening, right? And I think it's going well. I think the new technology is something that we've had to do a lot of training on, and then we're going to have to do a lot more when we get into the sensors and how the sensors operate and the mitigation when they do pick up a refrigerant leak in the system. There's some challenges there, but it's just different, right?
Yeah.
And that's the key.
I would agree, and I would say that when you look at the transitions that have happened in previous refrigerant changes, there haven't been changing from an necessarily A1 to an A2L, and now incorporating the flammability and the refrigerant sensors. And it's not just training at the contractor level, it's also training at the inspector level and how they're interpreting standards and how those should be applied. And there's a lot of, I think, confusion just around all of this new stuff has been developed and written by us. Okay, now how do we apply all of it? And so that's what we're working to really educate the industry on.
Not to mention the confusion around what a 410A component is. I can't tell you the number of conference calls and meetings and discussions we all had trying to understand what the definition of a 410A component is. So we won't even touch that one.
It turns out you know it if you'll know it if you see it. Right?
That's right. Yeah, we'll see. So, let me understand. This has no rating, right? Okay, so it's not really. Okay, that makes perfect sense. But anyway, this is what we get. I'm being ugly, but this is what we get when you have strong energy and efficiency lobbies writing regulations without clear input from manufacturers and contractors and AHRI and all of us, and we're all advocating, but it just depends on who's got the stronger voice in the room.
Yeah, and hold on one second. I would just also say that just because we have gray hair doesn't mean we remember R12.
Exactly. That was a few years ago.
It seemed to go a lot.
Memories fade, right?
Yeah.
Sir, you had a question.
I was going to ask, you kind of touched on that on my question, but I'll ask it explicitly. Do you think there's a scenario under which under the existing administration, the regulations for the A2Ls gets relaxed as part of a broad-based scenario, and then the industry pulls back and locks them? Does it continue down the path either way?
No.
I'm glad you've got confidence in that. I'm impressed.
I just wanted to get you.
Oh my God, that would be such a colossal nightmare for the industry. I mean, we're up on Capitol Hill every day making sure that doesn't happen. The new Congress and the new administration is like gung ho on getting rid of regulations, and that's one that we are adamant about keeping. That was bipartisan. That was signed into law by the current president back in his first term. That would be a nightmare, honestly.
I'll give from the manufacturer's perspective, it would be a major challenge for our supply chain, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone, and I'll let Danfoss can answer this better but you look at Copeland and LG and Danfoss and everyone else. I mean, we're bringing in A2L compressors, right? So all of a sudden, hey, pivot. We need to now, it would take 90 plus days, I would think, in order to even be able to start building and get those lines back up and running, because you're totally, your components and all your parts and all your tools and everything else now is set for A2Ls. Mm-hmm. So, again, that's where we all say the uncertainty, but I hope you're right, but who knows what could be written into the regulations.
Well,
we would prefer it not to happen, I can tell you at that point.
It's not to say that people are not going to try.
Yeah.
They will. They definitely will. I mean, folks that opposed the AIM Act before are going to come back for a second bite at the apple. There's no question about it. Yep. So it's up to us to be particularly vigilant about that.
Yeah, but I will just try to also, I think I completely agree. I think it's not going to change anything, because we are super invested now. Everybody's super invested now in this. And I think if you look at what EPA is doing with the SNAP program, they're even reviewing proposals for A3 like R290, because Europe is ahead than, I would say, North America on, I would say. So I think they're giving one step ahead and looking at how do we, I would say, get the charge limits up, and how do we, I would say, review the building codes for A3s, like 290 for heat pumps. So I think that's the way to go, but there's no way pulling back on A2Ls now.
So, from our lips to God's ears. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I have not a technical question, it's more of a behavioral question. It might actually be good for people in the room as well as the panelists. So I'm always thinking about consumer trends of what makes home comfort best for the homeowner. I'm always really focused on the homeowner. You mentioned your experience with AI, and you got this alert. And how do homeowners feel about AI and connectivity and being able to alert them in advance? Do they like it? Are they worried that Big Brother's out there? I'm just curious from the panel and then maybe from the room because they may have some experience.
Well, I mean, I would start off on that. I think that there are some applications where that is super helpful, like in my situation, but I do not think it's helpful, for example, to have, that on your stove. I mean, what, you're going to put a roast in when you go to work and then you're going to set it to start at 4 o'clock? No, you're not going to do that. So I think sometimes it's just like too cute by half, but for something like this, I think it is super helpful.
I think it runs a gamut. It's very personally dependent on that homeowner's feeling about AI or integration at home. There are some that just want to go up and turn the thermostat, and that's what they want. They don't want interactions through their phone. They don't want the additional monitoring. There are others that really love the connectivity and the interaction they can bring, the potential for diagnostics and prognostication, and just the taking off of the mental load, so to speak, from the homeowner of having to worry about their system, I think is a benefit, and certainly it depends on how they feel about it. It's kind of a
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one too. This is one that's near and dear because for us, it's what's the value prop to the consumer. And right now we've all had connected products, but a lot of times it's been on our higher end products, which is a small percentage of the market. One of the focuses, how do we get that into more base efficiency products? But if you look at it for a consumer, my view based on VOC and voice of consumer that we've gotten is, hey, my expectation is it works. I don't want any problems. So then you take it and go, okay, how can I give that consumer a better experience? One of the ways is by being able to that connected solution for the contractor to be able to tell them before they roll the truck what they're going to. And when you look at it, that's a real focus area for us is how do we help that contractor know before they pull out of the drive, really what level of service tech can be sent to that job to solve that problem. Then all of a sudden, you've got real value in the channel. The consumer sees the benefit because, truthfully, the best case scenario is for the consumer to be called or reached out by their contractor. They say, you've got a problem. We're headed your way tomorrow. Is that okay? Or today or whatever. So those are the areas that we're really trying to focus on is when you get to that value prop for truthfully, the dynamic of getting the alert is a great thing. Our systems do that, but truthfully, I don't really want the alert. I want the problem fixed.
Yeah. But the fact that they knew exactly what was wrong with it and they knew what part they needed and they could just bring it on over with somebody who knew exactly what they were doing. I swear he wasn't there for 15 minutes and everything worked great.
Yeah. We just also, there are some the challenge on some of this is just data security, right? And privacy, and that becomes a challenge. So we got to, as an industry, we have to figure that out and get the consumer to say, hey, it's okay that I want that installing contractor to be able to know my system's operating correctly.
Yeah, I did start getting ads for circuit boards.
No, but I think so from my side, I think all these digital enable, I would say, tools and equipments, what does it do? I think it helps to improve the efficiency and the productivity. I think it gives you, I would say, the level of information, and sometimes this is a whole lot more than what you require, but I think at least it's giving you the insight in your equipment, or you can say your air conditioning, your heat pump, that helps you, I would say, manage that, I would say, from a distance, you can manage your temperatures with sitting here from your room. So it helps your efficiency and helps your productivity. The second thing is it's all about consumer, because if you ask my daughter, she may have a different preference than what I have, and I would say the younger generation, they are more digital savvy, and they would prefer to have more digital enabled tools and equipments than I would say people at my age. So I think there's also age generational, I would say, expectation, but from an equipment manufacturer, from a component manufacturer. I think we are bringing all this enablement in, I would say, monitoring, remote monitoring systems. So that is only going to help, I would say, from efficiency and productivity. And I think we'll see more and more of that as artificial intelligence, I would say, ramps up. And I think the demand from the end consumers, from equipment manufacturers, component manufacturers, I believe this is the way to go.
And Randy, I love what you said. It's also about educating, right? Like the contractor is going to know exactly what to have on their truck.
Right.
Letting the homeowner know that, like it's just
Yeah.
going to make everything so much easier to snap and learn. This was really helpful. So thank you.
Good. We'll get there.
Yeah, we will. The fact that I did all of this on my phone, you should be really impressed by. I was pretending to be a millennial here. I just don't have a printer here, so I couldn't bring paper. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Hey, I work for energy efficiency rebate programs in Maryland. If you could ask me for, your wish list, what's coming?
I would answer it and say simplicity for the contractor. I will tell you that, with the IRA and tax credits, we saw it firsthand. The tax credits have been out for a long time, but I will tell you, we really didn't see a lot of the local push in the market, and I think a lot of it was because of fear of explaining how a tax credit works to a consumer and telling them they have to wait till April to get it. So we really didn't see a lot of movement on some of that. I think when you look at the complexity that I'm seeing in some of the early IRAs, now those are frozen, right? But when you saw some of that, I saw a lot of contractors basically just raise their hands and go, you know what, it's too hard, it's too challenging. No. I think the best advice I could give is really figure out what you're trying to drive, make it simple, make it something that's affordable for the consumer, not the absolute top end of the spectrum efficiency rating, and you'll get a lot of adoption and drive for the results. If that answers your question, but at least what I've seen in my experience.
Does that mean that we should focus on midstream rebates where they go through the distributor with less paperwork?
It's hard to say what I don't know the answer to that. I think the key is, I know the programs that I saw a lot of adoption with many years ago were the heat pump incentives that I saw Alabama Power and Georgia Power when I was a local salesperson. Those were driving behavior. A lot of that was financing incentives they were doing to consumers to install those products. So those are the things that we've seen, and I mentioned earlier. We do a lot of financing incentives to drive behavior and to help contractors give the consumer a lower cost and price point, and that's where we put a lot of our focus. So that's something to be said too, is instead of rebates, helping them be able to get the affordability there to be able to afford the monthly payment.
Yeah, I would agree. And incentivizing contractors to use financing, especially a big deal. A lot of them aren't necessarily going out there recommending financing, making sure that the homeowners are educated that they can get financing for these sorts of installations is pretty big. But at the end of the day, it's how can we make this more affordable for the homeowner, because they're the ones writing the check, and so it needs to be something they can afford to put in to change behavior.
Yep. For sure.
Very good.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
So from an education standpoint, we're starting to see a lot of companies want to do more in-house training. Now, field experience you can't beat compared to a trade school.
Right.
Everybody knows this.
Right.
The problem is a lot of these companies now want to do 12 weeks, earn as you learn, pump out technicians. That's good. Now with this new technology coming out, H2Ls, new safety protocols, all this, are you going to trust a kid off the street that just had 12 weeks of training, or a kid, spent 10 months, year and a half of training
In the field?
in the close to the field?
Yeah.
So where's that fine line going to break? I mean,
Well, I mean,
trade schools are now going to have to adjust how we're going to coach, design, new visual fragrance, A3 that they start coming along, and companies. Now we have to compete with companies wanting to train. And here's the other issue. A lot of my students that I deal with, the hardest one I deal with, grew up during COVID. So we got to think that a lot of these new technicians are coming from this COVID era. They're a little different.
As every generation says, right? Yeah.
Dealing with that mindset, that mentality, that's who we're trusting going into this A2 well era and soon the A3. So is it 12 weeks, let's pump them out and let's see how good they do. At the meantime, let's hope we don't blow up a house, especially especially in the South. Now, A2 wells, understanding other places is perfect. Extreme conditions. I'm in Texas, North Texas, where, our humidity standard is about 55%, 95 to 105. You go further south, you want to go to that armpit in Houston, or, you go deep into the valley, a little bit drier, El Paso drier, and of course our sister school in Phoenix, where it gets up to about 115, 120. So now that education is going to have to change depending on geographic location. So from an education standpoint, y'all going to have to go to school
yeah.
and change up how you're going to be educated and training.
I'll give you an opinion on it, which is, and it's an opinion. I think as an industry, we have to touch contractors and train at every step of the process. And for me, that is the manufacturer has to give all the virtual tools, all the technical materials, basically invest in training centers and do on-site training every single day. Then we invest with our wholesalers to set up training labs. Then we invest with our contractors to basically put training labs in their facilities. Then we invest with the utilities to give equipment and donate things for their training labs for those. It's every pathway that you can touch a technician. We have to find a way to do that. And trade schools are a critical element of it. But I think the on-the-job training and the continuing ed and touching them, and I will tell you, Nate, we need to find a way to get Nate to be more of a factor in our industry and more of a requirement. When you look at it, I wouldn't say requirement, but a something that he's extremely proud of at the contractor level, to have that certification, to be able to show that and be able to explain it to those homeowners as why that technician is bringing more to the equation. My total answer is it's a very complex problem and it's not going to get any easier, but we all have to work together on it.
I'm glad you brought up Nate because I know there's the Ready Start Nate. Most of my kids register and they start, and then after 2 years they can go to the next certification. So that is kind of good you said that, and it would be nice if certifications get looked at a little bit more in reputation, as opposed to just something that looks good on a resume.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Just as a very brief aside, and then we actually have to wrap up. My technician who comes out to my house to fix my system, his name is Nate.
Did John Lanier help you with that name?
Nate certified?
So the very first thing I asked him was, "Are you Nate certified?" And he was like, "Yes."
There you go.
And of course, they're always shocked that you even know what Nate is. Really? Wow.
Okay.
So, awesome. Anyway, thank you all for taking the time this morning, and thank you all for coming in here.
Thank you.
It's been a good discussion.
Appreciate it. Thank y'all.